Hey everyone, Phobos here, coming at you with another build guide, and today we're going to be talking about my Scorching Totem Hierophant. And there's been quite a few of these builds popping up lately. I see them on Reddit sometimes they pop up in my YouTube feeds, stuff like that. And I think this is a bit different take on it than most of the takes out there, so I'm going to go ahead and make a video about it. Obviously, I guess why a Scorching Ray Totem, right? So I did a Scorching Ray character prior, and it was a Trickster. And that was basically abusing the fact that when you kill something with totems and they're burning, it actually counts as your kill. Now, I'm pretty sure this has actually been fixed, by the way, so if anybody is going to try and do like a new reincarnation of the old build, I'd be very skeptical about that and try it out yourself first. The reason why I don't think that's the case is because I've tried to use, what is it called, the Blood Rage trick on this character, which is where you have Blood Rage with Immortal Call and cast when damage taken, and the idea is that you get hit and it puts on Blood Rage, and then you get hit again and it instantly takes it off, and when it cancels it and then reapplies it, it actually still counts as it being cancelled, right? So it procs the Pantheon that you see here, the Arcali one, and gives you the 50% increased recovery rate of life and all that shit. Now, when I was doing this to proc the Pantheon, I also expected to be getting frenzy charges, because, you know, you get frenzy charges from killing stuff with frenzy on, and I wasn't getting any at all. So it seems like this bug has been fixed, or at least some aspects of it have been fixed. I'm not entirely sure if like it wouldn't work with Trickster at all, but it seems to be fixed. And then when I peeked at Trickster, I noticed that they added a bunch of the on the node, like Patient Reaper. That was the one that I centered my entire other build around, which is where you get the regen after you kill stuff. I noticed that they also just give you like flat percent mana, percent life, and percent ES, I think, on kill. So I was wondering if that was a change they made to compensate for the fact that they nerfed, or they not nerfed, but they fixed this bug. I'm not really sure, but I would just be very careful trying it. But anyways, the Trickster was mostly for utility, right? It was to get a lot of life regen, and the idea was that there wasn't that many other Ascendencies out there that really scaled the Scorching Ray damage that well, and Scorching Ray does a lot of base damage. So there was pretty much like Berserker. You could go Chieftain, but there's not really a lot there. I think it was really between Berserker and Trickster. And obviously Trickster is just more like tanky / regen centric when you rank the map, and Berserker is just more damage. And obviously there's some pretty good utility with the way you use your Warcry. But now with the Hierophant, we are basically offered another way to scale damage, and it's by getting 2 totems for free, which is absolutely wonderful. Skills like Dark Pact and this really benefited a lot from this change, because there wasn't good Ascendancies for them, right? Like you didn't have the Inquisitor Ascendancy like you do for Freezing Pulse and Frostbolt Totem, you know? Where that's still a really good Ascendancy, but you know, why would you go Inquisitor with Scorching Ray? You just wouldn't. So that's the whole reason why you go Hierophant, is because it just gives you free totems. Now, this build is pretty much focused around being hybrid, getting a lot of effective health, basically, and then just doing pretty good damage with our totems. I believe the totems are like around 300k-ish to Shaper, something like that right now. And there's 5 of them. So it's like 1.5 mil. It's pretty good, especially considering that they are able to stay on target very well most of the time, as long as the boss isn't crazy mobile or anything. So let's get into it. I guess first we'll go over the links and stuff. That's the easiest, right? So Scorching Ray 21. Obviously doesn't need to be a 21. Something I want to point out as well before we really get into the meat of this is that this is pretty much can be a budget build. The gear that you're going to see here is not necessarily budget, because I've just had some time to work on the build, obviously. And yeah, so it's not all going to be budget, but you don't need any of this, and I'll explain like every piece what you need, what you don't. So don't need 21 Scorching Ray, but obviously it's nice. It's actually a huge damage boost. Elemental Focus, Controlled Destruction, Burning, Swift Affliction, Efficacy. That's going to be your 6th link. Swift Affliction, I believe, is the last one you want to add. So if you're on a 5 link, just go Burning, controlled, focus, Scorching Ray, efficacy. And that's that. Then Kikazaru's, these are, I mean, I don't want to say they're mandatory, but they kind of are if you want to use the damage stacking jewel anyway, right? Because I personally just like using them now. I used to actually use these rings without using the, or I used to use the Soul Mantle rather, without using the rings, and I would just clear the curses with a Sulfur Flask that had warding on it because it's very easy to keep the Sulfur Flask up 24/7, and I didn't even stop doing that because I didn't like the fact that I couldn't keep warding up or anything, because I could, but it was just the fact that it just felt like so much better just having the curse reduction on you, because then map curses get nerfed as well, the life regen's amazing, so there's just a lot of good things about these rings, and I really like using them in conjunction with Soul Mantle. Obviously they allow you to do the self-flagnation trick, which we are using in this build. Oops, and that really pushes it over the edge for me. If I can find my self-flagnation to show you guys in case you don't know what it is, right there. So 18% damage per curse on you. Yeah. So now the gem itself says you can only have one additional curse, but this actually, like the Soul Mantle pushes the limit of that basically. Like it removes that cap. So that's always nice. Going to the neck, Nagamahus. You don't need this at all. This isn't really that expensive though, to be honest, but again, don't need it. You could actually just use a, if you want to be more defensive, you could even use like the life regen base, but you could also just use, you know, like any stat base, you'd be fine. Stygian Vise here, don't need a Stygian Vise, obviously, it just helps a little bit, gets you a gem. In this case, like, the gems aren't really that insane, because there's not too many insane mods you can get on Abyss gems for Scorching Ray, so you could get like a damage over time one, possibly, but this one's just life and cold rose and stuff like that. These boots are really good, but don't need anywhere near this again, and they're basically just ES boots. On the boots, I pretty much like to just go for full ES, because you need the movement speed roll, right? So if you need the movement speed roll, then getting a life roll would only allow you a little bit of ES, and this build is mostly, like, you don't want to dip into your life. The life is basically there to take a huge hit. It's not really there to be dipping into all the time. So the idea is to get your ES big, is what you're trying to do. So that's why I prefer to just have no life on the boots and just invest fully into ES, because you're not really going to get a big ES value on the boots if you have life and move speed, right? Because you can't get both of the other prefixes. The int on there is always nice, but you don't need that at all. In terms of an enchant you want for this, you probably want the regeneration on hit or something. It's like 2% of your life and mana regenerated per second on hit. That's probably the best one, because Scorching Ray doesn't really have a lot of good options, because a lot of them rely on being dealt with hits. Like there's the penetration one as the hit. Scorching Ray doesn't crit, so the crit one's gone. I guess it would help you proc Orb Storms easier, but you don't really, it's not really an issue. The flat lightning isn't really that good, right? The addeds aren't that good because they don't get added to Scorching Ray, so that's pretty much the best one, I would say, is the regeneration one. Moving on to the gloves. Now the gloves is a slot where you can obviously opt for the tri-ES prefixes, and that's not necessarily bad if you can get it, but I just kind of lucked into these. They had life, and I could craft the ES on, and they were tri-res, really needed that, so just went with these. Pretty good gloves. And then the Helm. Nothing special, no lab enchant really, just found this on PoE.trade, wasn't even really that expensive because there was only one res, and hybrid stuff is usually not very expensive, so yeah, not too bad. This is another piece where you can definitely afford to get the hybrid life on there, right? And this is going to be this is just the budget Doriani's basically. I think it has basically the damage of a Doriani's. Yeah, it looks about right. But you can also just use a Doriani's and it's fine. This one's nice because it has a little bit more attack speed, gives some mana, stuff like that. But a Doriani's also gives cast speed, which is nice for Scorching Ray targeting. So, you know, to each their own. Still has a decent amount of attack speed. So, and this is going to be like the heart of our build. So, I actually just bought like an Esches, was it like mirror, I think, and then used the blessing to get this. Got a pretty good roll, so just kept it. This is going to be like the heart of our build, basically, where chaos damage does not bypass energy shield while not on low life or low mana. We're not on low mana, and the basic idea here is that we never get to low mana unless our ES is already depleted, in which case we don't need the effect from the shield anymore, right? Because we're only going to dip into our life if our ES is entirely completed thanks to the shield effect, because we're not already low mana. So yeah, it works out pretty well there. And when this item first came out, I was just always thinking, I was like, this is such a dog shit fucking item. Like, who could ever use this? Like there's no, all the builds I can think of for this are trash, you know, like you want to be low life, obviously, for all this stuff, and it just makes me laugh, because here I am using it. That's how PoE works, and it's kind of cool, honestly. So, there's that. But, yeah, let's go into the other, just skill gem setup. So this is just the standard movement skill setup. GMP, cast when damage taken, Ice Spear, Immortal Call. This is just to get your Immortal Call up, and then, it shoots the Ice Spears to get your Orb Storms up. It's nice. Typically not needed. If you want to run something else here, if you prefer to run Duration in a slot or something, you can. Not the end of the world, but I just happen to like it. Unfortunately, you can't put Orb Storms on cast when damage taken, because otherwise I would probably just drop the multi-proj idea, put it on here, and then put a increased duration, but you can't, so oh well. This is for Equilibrium setup. Now, you have to keep in mind, because we opted to take the Totem node, I know a lot of people aren't doing this, but because we opted to take Ancestral Bond, we can't apply Equilibrium ourselves. It's not really as big of a problem, I think, as a lot of people would like to make it out to be, because the traps feel pretty fluid, and 90% of the time you don't need to use them anyway. You're mostly using them against things that are really tanky and stuff like that, so bosses and stuff. And on a boss, it's easier to focus your attention. Like, it's not like you're micromanaging on every yellow mob, you know, ooh, I gotta get my Equilibrium up for this. Excuse me. It's not really like that at all, so don't worry too much about that. You just threw the Stone Golem in there for no reason. Obviously the Cluster Trap, just to get a better spread. This is cast when damage taken, Enfeeble, and then the Orb Storms isn't meant to be linked to the cast when damage taken, because like I said, it doesn't come out, but just putting our Orb Storms in here with the crit, because we didn't need to put it somewhere else, because power charges aren't really, you know, worth it for this build or anything like that, so we don't need to do that. And then unfortunately this build actually doesn't get what do you call it, Arcane Surge, because if you look at the Hyro node, as we can see here, we have 100% reduced cost of skills when you're on full ES, which is most of the time because we have a lot of ES regen. Now there is a way to circumvent this, and this character's on standard right now, so I haven't done it, but I would probably do this if I was making it again, which is you use a Fervent Mind, basically, right? And what that does is this node right here doesn't actually like override everything. It's literally just additive. So you're getting 50% flat reduced cost of skills, and then you're getting 50% while on full ES. So if you do like Voidbringers or something, if you throw Voidbringers on where it's like 60% increased, like it literally just will take 60% off that top. So instead of having 100% reduced, you're down to like 40. So I'm pretty sure that's how that works, because I used a Fervent Mind on my other character on softcore that I'm going to be showing you in probably a couple days or a week, my Whispering Ice character, and it works just fine to get Orb of Storms, or not Orb of Storms, it works just fine to get Arcane Surge. So that's definitely what I'd be doing in this character. Work a Fervent Mind in there, or use some other source of increased mana cost of skills. I just find that the Fervent Mind is the easiest one, because you probably don't want to be running Voidbringer, because it doesn't really do anything else for your build. I guess it would make proccing the overload easier, but you're probably going to need the res in that slot. So, moving on to the last slot, we got Enlighten, Discipline, Herald of Ash, and Enfeeble. You don't really need the Enlighten even, but, you know, the more life you can free up, or the more mana you can free up, the better, technically. but you don't really need it. Discipline, obviously, level 20. Herald of Ash for the damage. And I have a self-cast Enfeeble here. You can replace this with any other curse. Typically, I would map with like a Flame Ability or something like that, just to increase damage. And then I'd have the other cast on my damage taken Enfeeble to, just in cases where I get hit suddenly. But I was just doing some bossing, and I had a Enfeeble in here that was stronger. So that's the idea there. So that's the jewel set, or the skill setup. Now the tree. So I'll just give you a preview of the tree. This is all going to be linked in the description, of course. But just trying to get into my mind here and think of like the decisions, some of the decisions that I wanted to make. So I guess one of them was going hybrid as opposed to CI. So I actually have a CI Hierophant Frostbolt totem that's gonna come out probably in a week or so, or maybe a week and a half. And for that build, it just feels right to go CI, just because of how the synergy goes, I guess you could say, in some aspects of it. But because of how I wanted to build this around like life regen and stuff like that, it just didn't make sense to really, and because it's like coming down here for Arsonist. Like Arsonist is pretty good for this build actually, right? Because you get the fire damage and the regen, and then this is armor and regen. So if you're trying to build something more regen centric and you're getting into this lower portion of the tree, it just makes sense to kind of go hybrid. On the Freezing Pulse build, that wasn't the case at all, and we don't really come down here. So it's a lot easier to just go like fully S and go basically CI. But this is why when I tried doing this build of CI, I would get like around 8k ES, and I have more effective HP this way. Like when I build the Freezing Pulse thing as hybrid, I have around, like maybe 6k or something. So getting like the 8 point something k ES, and then being able to use Memory Vault and stuff like that on the CI character is really great. For the Freezing Pulse thing, wouldn't be as great in this circumstance, right? So just kind of different. You have more points to play around with here too, I think, is the other thing, right? Because you don't have to invest into all the crit. So that's gonna like impact how you play out your builds, basically, right? How many points are available and stuff like that. So, playstyle, I guess I'll talk about. So the playstyle is actually really simple. Obviously, you just put down your totems. They cast really quick, as you can see, because they have a lot of placement speed. Orbistorms is to get your thing up, your overload. And then if it's a boss, you're just kind of running around tossing the traps to get equilibrium on him. And you're just shield charging out of the way and stuff like that. So as you can see, the traps cover quite a wide area. And yeah, that's pretty good. Very simple. Golem we use is the stone golem just for extra regen, because the fire golem doesn't really add that much more damage. Right now we've got, as you can see, it's like 740 regen, and then when we have this active, what is it called? When we have the Pantheon active, it's going to be even higher than that. So you got pretty good regen. In terms of the Flask setup and how we proc the Pantheon, so obviously you can just take the Pantheon, and occasionally it's going to proc from you taking damage over time and then stopping, but you can force it with Coralito's signature. Now luckily this doesn't have any adverse effects for us because we don't crit at all or anything like that. So basically none of this affects us except for the take 30 chaos damage per second during Flask. And that's fine because we have the Esha's shield, so it doesn't go through ES or anything like that. So as you can see, if we want to show that this is working, you pop the Flask and then basically just wait, and you'll see this value change from 17 to 2300. It's going to last 4 seconds, and it comes back down. Pop it again just to show you. Now you're probably saying, okay, but that's your energy shield recharge per second, not your energy shield regeneration per second. Well, your energy shield regeneration per second is also affected. It's just that because of how it's described on the tooltip, there's no actual stat for, let me open up the Pantheon. think I explained this in the last video, but so there's no actual stat of increased recovery rate of life and energy shield. It's just like it applies to the recovery, which is the keyword, right? Where is this? My bad. So it applies to the recovery or the recharge, but it also applies to this. And you can just tell that it's active when this is up. This is like the flag to show you that this goes up. So that would be increased by 50%. So you get a lot of regen. And the good thing about this is that the regen is sort of on command. Unlike with the Trickster, with the Patient Reaper node, where you had to kill something, you can actually just pop this flask in a boss fight and get that regen after the 4 seconds. So it's pretty damn good. In terms of this, you're just using a sulfur flask. Right, I had this poison immune actually before I got the S shield, but you don't really need poison immune so much. I was also doing the poison guardian, so you don't really need this once you get the shield as much. I mean, obviously you're still taking chaos damage, you're not CI, so it's helpful, but you know, you can mess around with different things. Freeze immune here, movement speed, and then Eternal Life Flask of Staunching. Now, this is a seething. I think you'd actually be better off running a catalyzed here, but I currently have a seething, and catalyzed is just nice because when you do dip into it, you just pop the flask, it recharges relatively quickly, you're usually not in any danger, and unfortunately, if you take like a really big hit with this, and you pop this flask, you're just not going to recover all your life, and you're going to have to use the second charge most likely, or something like that, or you're just going to be left with like missing life, so it's going to be weird. With the catalyzed, you'll pretty much recover the whole thing. I think you actually see an example of that in the Hydra fight, where I popped this flask and it doesn't quite fill me up the first time, so I have to do it again. But yeah, so there's that. I guess talking about what the build is good at, bossing pretty much, as you could see from the 2 videos, the Hydra and the Phoenix. Unfortunately, this character is on standard because I died to the Dark Forest boss, which I know, good for bossing, died to boss, lol. But basically just because I was playing like a monkey, didn't have my bleed flask in because, I don't know, I must have just woke up with an abscess in my head or something that day. But I didn't have the flask in, and he bled me pretty hard, and I died, as to be expected without a bleed flask. So, I mean, normally the build wouldn't have any problem, just don't be bad, I guess. So, yeah, there's that. And, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so now that he's on standard, it's just really annoying getting these maps. I could rip them from hardcore, but I actually just spent like a ton of currency on this Freezing Pulse build. So I don't have a ton of currency left. I spent like a majority of mine on this and another build that are going to be coming out, so I don't really want to be ripping maps. I'm trying to buy maps on standard because I have tons of currency on standard, but you know, obviously nobody wants to sell anything, so if you want to sell me Minotaurs and Chimeras, you know, just drop me a comment and I'll definitely buy them from you, because I want to just make some videos of this doing Shaper and other stuff, because I think it's a pretty good bossing build. The one boss I wouldn't recommend doing is Uber Ziri. I would just say make a GC miner for that. There's really no reason to play a build like this, because it's Ziri, you can just do a complete control strat, whereas like you can't really do a control strat as well for something like Hydra, unless you get like an obscene amount of damage. It's the same thing for something like the other Guardians, like Minotaur and stuff. I think those are relatively unsafe to do with the GC miner, just because you're a bit squishier and you're not going to actually one-shot them, right? So that's why I prefer to use a build like this for those fights, and then for something like Ziri, where you don't have to one-shot her because you're doing splits of her and you're only killing chunks of her HP, GC miner is perfect for that. And I think that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I really need to mention here. Let's look at the Ascendency, see if there's any unintuitive choices. So obviously we got the totem nodes, and then this is just to go hybrid, right? Obviously, going this doesn't really do much because you don't benefit from the pen. You get the endurance charges, which is nice, but the power charges don't do anything for you. And then this, it's like you still have to cast Arcane Surge. You're not affected by the spell leech. You're not affected by the area. So yeah, I just think this is pretty much the way to go for sure. And yeah, just enjoy your insane amount of effective health and relatively easy bossing. So thanks a ton for watching this video, and if you liked it, drop it a like. If not, that's fine as well, and talk to you guys later.